It's crazy. So I'm ready to dive right in. Are you ready to go? Are you
Sure.
good?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, Michael, it's great to meet you. Thank you, sir, for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me, sir.
Yeah, you bet. Where are you located?
Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio. Okay. Well, I'm in Kansas City, so we're kind of somewhat in the same region
Yeah.
of the world, so to
Yeah.
speak. So, as I was saying, kind of before we got on here officially, what a interesting time politically that we're living through that is probably throwing all kinds of ranges of emotions into every human and every American alive. So, um, before we get into that, I want to know this. Probably one of the more momentous things that's happened for all of us that's influenced politics and all of us in so many ways was living through COVID. How much of living through that time period has influenced the way that you live your life and do things now?
I don't think in my personal life very much at all. I did, I got 4 shots and my wife got 3, but we kind of decided we were done with COVID shots.
Yeah,
So we never got any more because the stuff that came out, the non-testing, and I think DNA altering vaccines are not well enough tested yet.
yeah,
I would have taken the Johnson and Johnson, which was a standard vaccine
yeah,
with dead COVID in it. So um, it was a flashpoint for the country, I believe, because it divided the left and the right further apart
yeah,
because of their response to COVID. Um, my second book, published 5 books. You probably read a little about me, but the
yeah,
second book was about tribalism, and I talked about the factors that cause tribalism. Um, I ex and the end of the book, last chapter, I talk about how could we fix tribalism, because to me, it's the number one problem in our society,
yeah,
basically, because it keeps the government from moving forward because there's no consensus.
yeah,
So, uh, and I had 3 suggestions. One was an event that unites the whole country, like 9/11. Don't want a 9/11, but that would do it.
yeah,
The second one is fatigue, and everybody gets just tired of arguing about nothing because it's basically about ideology.
yeah,
And the third thing is some kind of grassroots effort on the part of the public when they realize how they're getting played.
yeah,
Um, I thought COVID, I'm telling you a long story to get to the point where I thought COVID was going to be our 9/11,
yeah,
because here you had the country united against a disease, an attack, a pandemic, and immediately got politicized,
yep,
which is unfortunate.
yeah.
So here
Wow,
we are.
that's you're totally right. And my head's swimming with all of these things that you've written in all of your books and what's and just particularly with what's going on right now. Um, so let's kind of peel back the layers. Right now, politically speaking, we're seeing things that are absolutely unprecedented.
Yes.
What is most alarming to you?
Well, actually, I'm less alarmed because Trump got elected.
Okay.
So there's that. And let me start the answer to your question with the fact that a lot of what is being done by Trump right now could not have been done by anyone else and was not done by anyone else. And the primary reason for that is he's a populist. No populist has ever been elected in our country. Every every president that's been elected has been a member of the establishment.
Yeah.
And the establishment does not want to blow things up. The
Yeah.
establishment wants to protect the establishment.
Yeah.
And I went to the Republican convention and I interviewed some people there. I interviewed the gentleman who was running the campaign, not the campaign manager, but the operational guy. And I said, "Who's your biggest problem?" And his answer was the Republican establishment,
Interesting.
because they want to they hate Trump because he's not one of them, and they don't get to control the party. He does. So they're as opposed to Trump. This is the Liz Cheney group, the Never Trumpers, the Lincoln Project. All these people are establishment connected people who resent Trump because of his philosophy.
So in this short window that he's been doing things, what's your take on what's going on right now?
Well, I mean, my first reaction is it's amazing because the amount of corruption that has been regularly occurring, probably throughout our history, no one has ever looked at.
Yeah,
I mean, so the whole Doge thing is amazing to start with. I mean, to find out that the Treasury Department issues checks and they don't write down who the check went to and what the purpose was,
yeah,
there's no documentation. That's insane.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so I wonder where the auditors are for the federal government that all this stuff could proliferate. Maybe the auditors are in bed with the people doing. I mean, I don't know. It's just it's crazy. I mean, a corporation has to, as you I'm sure know, has to get audited regularly to verify their P&L and their balance sheet.
yeah,
And if you don't get audited or you fail an audit, your stock drops precipitously. So you have to be rigorous about cost control.
yeah.
Why is the government not rigorous about cost control? Um,
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember so being here in Kansas City, there was a time period where the city of Kansas City, their school district, went through all of these changes. They couldn't keep a superintendent. It was a mess. They lost accreditation. It was bad. When they got a superintendent in that was starting to clean things up, he started seeing these indiscrepancies you're talking about. Like, where's
yeah,
money going? Why are these people getting a check? So they got to the point where they told every employee they had to come down to the Board of Education to pick up their check. And there was checks that were just stacking up
wow.
because no one was coming to get them. And they were like, why? Like, what was so it's those kinds of things that I think that administratively you got to wonder like, did it just was there fatigue? Did it get put under the rug unintentionally? Like, how did these things happen for a society that could use those monies in so many other productive ways?
Yeah. Well, Musk said yesterday, somebody asked that question, how could this happen? He said, when people just don't care.
Yeah,
If you work for the federal government, you don't, there's a mistake, you just don't care. So, in a corporation, if you just don't care enough, you don't have a job.
yeah. You know, it's funny. That's totally, you hit the nail on the head. I have a good friend of mine that started working for the IRS. Um, he had moved away for a little while and came back and started working for him. And I was like, what's your big revelatory like moment about working for the federal government? And he was like, man, no one knows what hand is moving, what hand, what shoe is on what foot. It is literally this place where no one knows what's going on. Like
Hmm.
they just don't know if the dog's wagging the tail or the other way around. It's very bizarre.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
So there's the whole Doge thing, which is incredible. I mean, it almost looks like, and most of what's being found out are Democrat programs. I don't know how many, and I'm sure the Republican establishment is in this somehow, but maybe not to the degree the Democrats are. But the deep state is liberal minded. So, um, I mean, is the Democratic Party really a corruption operation? We're going to find out a lot more.
yeah,
Um, and then there's the whole RFK thing.
yeah.
He just got approved, by the way. The vote just ended.
Okay.
Um, I think stuff like that is just as important because big pharma and big medicine and big food are all corrupt too
Yeah,
because they corrupt us.
yeah,
And the example I always give when I talk about this particular issue is the food pyramid. You're familiar with the food pyramid.
yes,
And the food pyramid came out in 1965 and it was upside down for what it should have been.
yeah,
You should eat carbs all day, but don't eat any meat. Meat was at the top.
yeah,
And the reason that was promoted is because the lobbyists for the companies that fill their food with carbohydrates paid more money to the politicians than anybody else did.
yep,
So they're directly responsible. And I might call this without hyperbole, the greatest crime ever played on the American people in the history of our country
Yeah.
because it caused all this obesity,
Yep.
diabetes, all this stuff. 60% of healthcare goes toward lifestyle problems.
Yep.
And the lifestyle problems are contributed to greatly by big food.
Yep.
You know,
Just
if you're a
information.
smoker, you drinker, that's your choice. If you're eating, if the only choices for food you have are bad, it's not your choice totally.
Right. Yeah. So let's get to where you are right now in your life and what you're doing. What did you want to be when you were a kid? Take me back to where you were born and raised, and how did you evolve into this place of writing about the political culture?
Well, I've always been a STEM based, I was a STEM based kid, like math and science. Um, I, when I was in high school, I decided I wanted to be an engineer. So I went to engineering school as an undergraduate. I have a BS in chemical engineering. And then I was going to get drafted to go to Vietnam, and I didn't get any job offers. So I had no job. And so I went to graduate school just to kill time until I was going to get drafted. And then at the last minute, sorry about this. I can't, wait a minute. Let me turn that down. At the last minute before I was going to get drafted, Nixon stopped the draft.
Yeah.
So it was complete luck. I had a very low draft number. I would have
Wow.
gone.
Yeah.
So then I sort of rebooted my objectives and I decided to focus in graduate school on computer science. So I got a PhD in computer science. Then I went into academia for a while, and then I got into the corporate world because that's much more rigorous and challenging and whatever, non-bureaucratic.
Yeah.
So I've had a 40-year career as an IT consultant, and I managed the engineering team at a company located that's based here in Columbus.
Okay.
So, so that's the one side. That's the left brain part of
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Um, but I've always loved history. I got a reward in high school for the top American history student. Um, I'm not bragging. I'm just giving
Sure.
you points here.
Sure.
Um, so I've always loved history, read history, enjoyed history, blah, blah. And then when my kids got old enough, I decided I was going to start writing. I also spent about 20 years painting, oil painting.
Okay.
Um, I probably have the equivalent of a BS, BFA, Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in terms of the number of courses I took. So,
Yeah.
but I always enjoyed that's like a right brain thing.
Yeah.
So I was always searching for the right brain thing.
Yeah.
And then I started after the turn of the 21st century, I started thinking more seriously about writing. Um, the first thing I did was start a blog about ancient history, which is still going.
Yeah.
Started in 2008, and just writing articles, blog posts about the Romans and the Greeks mainly.
Yeah.
Um, then that got me interested into politics because I was studying politics in the ancient world. So I thought, well, I'm going to start writing about politics in the modern world.
Yeah.
Uh, the first two books I actually wrote were novels, never published, but now I'm going to publish them this year
Okay.
because I'm kind of taking a break from nonfiction politics in doing fiction
Yeah.
because much more free. You
Yeah.
feel like you're free because you're inventing the story instead of looking up facts that bolster your opinion. So,
Yeah.
um, I the final impetus for writing my first book was reading Jonathan Haidt's book. If you know who Jonathan Haidt is,
I've heard the name. Yeah.
okay, he is a social psychologist at NYU. He
Okay.
wrote a book published in 2012 called The Righteous Mind, where he laid out the differences between the left and right that are genetic. And so there have been a lot of, you know, there's been a lot of scientific research about it, but he really put it in lay terms about he was explaining the differences, why the right fight over ideology, basically. And he identified some characteristics that people on the right have versus the people on the left and explained the differences between them. So I use that as a taking off point. I wrote a book. The first book was published in 17 called The Progressive Gene, which basically explained the behavior of the left. Then I was going to write The Conservative Gene, but the Trump tribalism thing reared its ugly head in 2018. So I wrote my tribalism book in 19
Yeah.
and went back and wrote The Conservative Gene in 21. Um, Then the fourth book is called Twilight of the American Experiment. Without moral balance, our republic will fall. And that's basically about the takeover of the narratives in our country by the left, namely the higher education, traditional media, and social media, and how that imbalance in information availability to the public is not a good thing
Right.
because you have people, you know, 30% on the left, 30% on the right, or 40 and 40, and then you the rest in the middle. And for the country to be successful, you have to have a balanced point of view in availability of information,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So then I kind of changed a bit because I started reading about thinking about tribalism, the causes of it, and then I started thinking about the billionaires controlling us, which led to the fifth book, which is um, can't remember my title. Oh, bi- hold it.
Yeah. Yeah. You got it.
Wow.
And that way we get to see it. So it's serendipity.
Yeah,
Okay, there we
Twilight.
go.
America's counterfeit democracy, rule of the power elite.
Okay.
And basically, the story there is that uh, billionaires really control our government. We don't.
Yeah.
And the way they control it is they're wealthy families and other billionaires are aligned with major corporations and they work together to control our lives,
Yeah.
basically. Um, the power elites, power elite is a term created by a sociologist, C. Wright Mills, who wrote a book in 1956 called Power Elite.
Yeah.
But basically, the power elites are the portion of the billionaire class that want to influence politics.
Yeah.
There's another portion that don't care and they just ride around their yachts and, have a good time.
Yeah.
But the ones that want to control, um, exert that control.
Sure.
And the interesting thing about it when you start looking at that is you'd say to your, and both parties are in the power elite. And you'd say to yourself, well, if both parties in the power elite, why don't why isn't it balanced, the fairness balanced? And the answer is because their interest as billionaires is more important to them than their interest as politicians.
Gotcha.
They have, because they have everything in common with I'm a billionaire, you're a billionaire, we both own yachts, we both take vacations, we both are rich, whatever, whatever. And so the billionaire class's objective, they have two objectives. One is to enhance their wealth.
Yeah.
The other is to create stability in the country to protect their wealth.
Gotcha.
Because if we had a depression, obviously, then they're going to lose wealth. So
Suffer.
everything they do in exerting control is based on those two things.
Yeah.
Um, to be honest, they don't really care. The billionaire class doesn't really care which party runs things. In fact, they don't mind if it flips because, then the other side controls it for a while and then we get it back.
Yeah. Sure.
Um, their method of control is multifaceted. Um, First of all, they put their own people in the executive branch. If you look at the attorney general, or I mean, at least up to Trump's time, Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury, all, and you look at the resumes of all those people, they're all clones.
Yeah.
They all went to a prep school.
Yep.
They all went to an Ivy League school.
Yep.
They work as either consultants, political operatives, corporate leadership roles, or worked in think tanks. So they're like all clones. So if you place your people at senior positions in the executive branch, you're going to control the executive branch,
Yeah.
at least to some degree.
Yeah.
Um, they also control um, the elections because they're the ones financing the candidates.
Yeah.
So they direct the money in whatever direction it needs to go to pick their best candidate, the candidate they want to win. And of course, they finance the election. Um, the power elite corporate combo has an organization that of think tanks that do their research for them. So if I'm a billionaire and I get an idea about, why don't we do this, then it goes into a think tank, and the think tank spit out position papers that go to the government. That go to the Congress and to the executive branch. This is what we think you ought to do because whatever. So, um, and they control the media.
Yeah.
Seven big media companies, conglomerates, all owned by billionaires or billionaires on the board or whatever, and they have a dedicated um, plan for the broadcasting of information to the public. One of the big things is, well, two big things. One is they constantly tell us they're not bad people. So they tell us how they're contributing to charity and whatever. So we shouldn't think of them as crooked.
Yeah.
The other thing they tell us is that everything's okay in America. Don't worry about it. So this is propaganda that we're fed all the time.
Yeah. Who's been your hero in your life? Who, politically or otherwise?
Well, when I was younger, it was always great minds, like Da Vinci or Beethoven or Shakespeare. I mean, people that I mean, writing like art is right brained.
Yeah.
So I really found my kind of right brain outlet because I'm frustrated when I can't be creative,
Yeah.
and so I've always admired people. I think creativity is an amazing human skill, and you can't really define where it comes from, but it's incredible. Like
Yeah.
musicians, I try to play musical instruments, a couple saxophone and stuff. I'm no good at all.
Yeah.
Uh, but to think about who somebody writes a song that affects my emotions, makes me sad, makes me happy. It's an incredible skill to be able to
Absolutely.
do that.
Yeah.
And so I've always appreciated creators, particularly, in the arts because they of the skill they have.
Yeah. If you could meet one political figure alive today in America that you find fascinating, who would you like to meet and talk with, spend some time with?
Good question. I don't know. I mean, the first person comes to mind is Trump
Right.
because Trump is an amazing human being. I mean, just in the sense that they tried everything to get rid of him, including kill him. You know, two two impeachments, six or seven indictments for bogus, crimes, and then two assassination attempts. And I'm not saying the Democrats hired the assassins. I don't know anything about that, but
Sure.
he had everything done to him possible to prevent him from succeeding. And he decided to not give up. And because he feels like he can benefit the American people, he's a populist in philosophy.
Sure.
And so I think that it's interesting what drives him. Now, I read his book that he wrote in 1987, Art of the Deal, and he told how he would be as president right in that book without knowing he would.
Yeah.
So, he's a fascinating person in terms of what he's been through, and he keeps, I mean, the energy level he's shown in 3 weeks is amazing. I mean, he's like, I don't know if he sleeps or what, because there's all these executive documents coming out and all that, trying to end the Ukraine war, whatever, whatever. He's not perfect. but he is dedicated to helping the American people, particularly his constituency, and he's not really a politician. He's a populist that leans more conservative than liberal.
Yeah.
Um, and I should say something about my own political philosophy because I don't want it to make it sound like I'm MAGA or something.
Sure.
I'm a moderate I'm genetically conservative, meaning I believe in traditions and that stuff versus tearing everything down. But I disagree with the Republicans on a lot of issues, probably more establishment Republicans than Trump. For example, I'm pretty liberal on social issues. I think abortion should be permitted if done early enough in the pregnancy. And other issues like that, I mean, I think that same-sex marriage should be permitted. All these things should be permitted if they make people happy.
Sure.
I just don't like them thrown in my face all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, let people live their own lives, and you can live your own
Totally.
life the way you want, and that's fine with me. So I differ with Republicans on many issues. Um, so I'm open to, and after reading Haidt's book and writing my own books, and we haven't got into this yet, but the difference between the right and left is genetic,
Yeah.
and it's 60,000 years old. These are behavioral adaptations that developed in a primitive society to make man more adaptable because one group likes what's new and one group likes the status quo. And if you
Sure.
have both groups, you can adapt better than if there's only one group. So I have to recognize the fact that the left brings value to society, and their primary value is they push for change.
Yeah.
And that's as legitimate as the Republicans pushing for this, trying to keep the status quo.
Yeah.
So we have to have consensus to move forward, which means the direction of politics has to be a partnership between the two parties.
Sure. Sure.
So
So yeah, no, I totally get it. That's fascinating. So at the end of the day, Michael, is the author, is the man that is doing all of these things. Everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, readers, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I'm an idealist, um, driven by the creative drive. Um, I, I guess that's it. I mean, I
Okay.
don't know. Those are the my main drivers.
Yeah. So in this political environment, you've laid it out pretty clearly between like where you believe on both sides and how you fit between the aisles. But in general and overall, in this new year, and with all of these things that are happening that we see unfolding right now, that's unprecedented, are you hopeful for the future of America?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because I mean, and let me elaborate on that in a little more detail. Um, Never has a radical political agenda been implemented in the history of the United States before Biden's term. And the reason is, and I'm sure you know this, most people do, you can't go too far from the center with an election campaign and get elected because you've got to convince the independents and the right and lefties that are close to the center to vote for you,
Yeah,
or you're not going to get enough votes.
sure.
The trick Biden played on everybody was he pretended like he was the old senator of 40 years who was a moderate. And everybody assumed, well, if he gets elected, he'll be moderate, but he made a deal with the devil with the radical left and implemented their agenda. So the fights between the left and right are basically about the left wanting to change and the right resisting change.
Yeah,
And so the stronger the left pushes change, the more the right reacts to it.
yeah,
People on the right are not combative like people on the left. They're individualists who would conservatives are. They just rather live their lives. They don't care about changing everything.
yeah,
But of course, the left wants one of the reasons they want change is they're very strongly attached to inequality. and they want to change our society so there is no inequality, even though that's very idealistic and probably not possible.
Yeah.
So the Republicans have been pushed far enough, or the conservatives pushed far enough by the left's radicalism that I mean, it exacerbated tribalism, made it even worse, but it caused them to react against it.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get it. Michael, if anyone wants to pick up your books, they want to reach out, they want to see paintings, any of the good work that you're doing in your world, where can they go to do that?
One place, my website is mikeandersonsbooks.com. So it's Anderson with an S and books with an S.com. There's podcasts there. My books are there, descriptions of the books. You can buy them through there by connecting to Amazon. Um, I write in Substack also. So I publish weekly articles there. My Substack link is there. So that's where I am.
I love it. Michael, this has been fascinating. I appreciate the perspective. It's so fresh and it's illuminating. I think we're all going to be so better off if we understand exactly what's going on. So thank you for your work, what you're doing, and taking a minute out to open up your door to your mind today. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Enjoy the conversation.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.